So my name is Brittany Hernandez. I'm going to be your host for this lightning talk series. I am a lawyer and the founder of Cor Meum Law and Command Kwai LLC, both of which focus on how innovations in tech can be used to solve human problems, both within the law and beyond. Today, Documate CEO and founder Dorna Moini will share her lessons learned from launching a consumer legal business. Feel free to post your questions in the chat as you think of them, and Dorna will pick them up once she concludes. After questions, I'll do a quick wrap up, after which you are free to stay on the call for an optional 5 minutes where I will do a bit of speed networking and invite 4 people to introduce themselves for 1 minute each. I'd now like to introduce our speaker for today. Dorna Moini is the CEO and founder of Documate, a no-code platform for building document automation and client-facing web applications for the law. Prior to starting Documate, Dorna was a litigator at Sidley Austin. There, in her pro bono practice, she worked with legal aid organizations to build a web application for domestic violence survivors to complete and file their paperwork, which led to the idea for Documate. Dorna is on the Legal Services Corporation Emerging Leaders Council and a member of Legal Aid Foundation of Los Angeles' advisory board. She was named an ABA Legal Rebel and is a Fast Case 50 honoree. She also teaches the Legal Innovations Lab at USC Law School. Dorna, the floor is now yours. So I'll stop sharing my screen just now.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Brittany. Can you guys see my slides now?
Yes.
Excellent. Well, hi, everyone. As Brittany mentioned, I am Dorna Moini, and I'm the CEO of Documate. But my journey in legal tech actually began many years ago when I was a lawyer, and I built a legal app for domestic violence survivors so that they could navigate the legal process online. We called it Help Self Legal. Then we realized that so many other lawyers wanted to build similar tools to what we built, but for different areas of law and different jurisdictions. So we basically built Documate for our former selves so that we could allow any lawyer to automate their expertise. So if you guys are here today, it's probably because you're thinking of building an online consumer legal business yourself, because you want to hear about our experience diving in head first, and mostly because you probably want to hear about the mistakes from your experienced older sister, which will be us. Next slide. Okay, so let's start with some stats on why you're here. In the next 10 years, it's been estimated that about 90% of legal services are going to be delivered online. In a recent survey by the Legal Services Corporation, 71% of consumers who were surveyed faced at least one civil legal problem in the past year. 86% of those legal needs were unmet, and most of these people can't afford the average attorney's billable hour rate. However, some of these people have disposable income, and some of these people can afford to purchase legal services if they were just packaged and priced in an affordable way, say as a legal product or a legal app. So the demand is there. It's just about delivering these legal services through technology and finding those people, which is what we're going to talk about today. So let's talk a little bit about what we built with Help Self Legal. We were essentially the TurboTax for domestic violence survivors. And as you can see on this screenshot here, what the platform did is that it allowed someone to navigate the domestic violence restraining order process by guiding them through prompts, videos, images, and logic-based questions. So you would follow a decision tree based on rules that we set up inside of the system. And at each phase of the process, you would get documents that you needed to file for your case. Sometimes you would also be routed to an attorney for additional help. We sold to consumers, into legal aid organizations, to law firm pro bono groups, and we got countless heartfelt and moving messages about the impact that we had on people's lives through this platform. And that was really what kept us going every single day. But you're here today to talk about the real numbers and metrics and not just the aspirations. So let's talk specifically about numbers. In the first few months, we got to about 1,400 monthly active users. We had an average, on average, people were paying about $15 to go through the process. And we did have some enterprise users, so law firms and legal aid grants that were quite a bit more profitable, but we're not going to talk about that in this session, because in this session, we're talking specifically about consumer legal tools. And then we had an annual run rate revenue of about 300K. So how did we do that? And what was our go-to-market? What was the journey there? Again, just on the consumer side, throwing some stats up here, 35% of our customers came in through Google Ads, 9% of our customers came in through SEO or content, which frankly would have probably been higher and even larger if we had continued down that path, because content strategy does take time. 17% of our customers came in through a variety of press that we got, which we'll talk about a little bit more in a second as well. 30% of our customers came in through a variety of referral networks, word of mouth, and people who couldn't serve our clientele. So self-help centers, legal aid organizations, and attorneys who couldn't serve our ideal customer profile. And then the remaining percentages are people that we just really couldn't fully track. So now that we have the basics down, let's talk about some of the concrete lessons that we learned, which just briefly kind of fall into a few categories: figuring out your audience, KPIs, and overall customer acquisition costs, which I'll shorten to CAC as we're going through this discussion, content strategy, paid search, press, and then support. So lesson number one, and this is like the biggest lesson I think that we learned, is you cannot build, I was talking earlier about all the different audiences that we were trying to serve early on. You cannot build a B2B and a B2C business all at once. So business to business, business to consumer, business all at once. Be very clear about who you're selling to and build that brand. We were selling to really anyone who would pay. We were sort of at the beginning like, okay, whoever wants to give us money, we're sort of desperate to just get this off the ground. And so we were selling to consumers, legal aid organizations, law firms, court self-help centers. Some of these people ended up becoming referral partners. So that was good for us. But in the meantime, we were pretty lost in the early days and we didn't really know who we were targeting. We were also spread really thin. I was the only sales and marketing person. The messaging wasn't clear enough, and we really weren't able to optimize a lot of the pricing and payment that we wanted to. I'll note that this is the opposite of what we've now done at Documate, where we've really honed in on small law firms, and we primarily target a few specific areas of law that we know have been uber successful on the platform. So for you, you may decide that you want to build a consumer, you may decide that you don't want to build a consumer legal business at all. Maybe you don't want to sell your estate planning legal app to consumers. Maybe you want to sell it to other lawyers. And I'll tell you that is a really important decision to make upfront, because the customer base is very different. The level of support that you're going to be provide, if you're the support person, is going to be very different, and it will sort of be a life-changing experience. So think about that early on. Along with this decision, really think about two things. Is your customer consumer, SMB, enterprise, or something else, maybe nonprofit or government? And then two, will it be high volume based? So are you building something that you're going to scale out and allow many, many people to use? Or are you building something really robust, time consuming, and incredibly valuable, but with high willingness to pay and with lower volume? So that's an important decision to make up front. So second thing that I would think about is think about your metrics and your KPIs early on. So all these 3-letter words: customer acquisition costs, cost per lead, cost per qualified lead, your return on investment. Think about those, but also be careful about what doesn't matter. We looked a lot at website traffic, bounce rate, impressions, etc. None of that matters. Eyeballs don't matter if they don't turn into customers. So be careful about getting caught up in vanity metrics that don't actually affect your bottom line. So make sure, next up on this list is making sure that your pricing makes sense, especially from a CAC perspective and an overhead perspective. So picking up from those metrics that we were talking about earlier, what did we mess up? Early on, really pricing and costs. So first on pricing, we wanted to provide something that was really affordable. Google Ads were costing us $25 to acquire a customer on average. But as I mentioned earlier, we were making $15 each time. So as this nice little comic shows you, you can't really make that up on volume. Additionally, the overhead was huge. So partially that was because I just really wanted to provide the best customer experience possible. People would come to us and they didn't know how to open up a zip file. So I would get on a call with them and explain that process to them. Way too much time and money being spent on something that was really low cost. I remember one person who couldn't get their documents to the court. So I vividly remember this. I sat on the floor in my house, licked envelopes, walked to the post office and spent $8 on postage to send this off to the court for this person. So yes, maybe in the early days, sometimes, you probably have heard like do things that don't scale in the early days, but that definitely doesn't scale. And so think about your pricing and your overhead early on to make that work. So don't worry, we did end up solving this. We started shifting our pricing to get to an equilibrium point. We created several different tiers of service, and we eventually landed on a 3-tier plan where about a third of our customers actually chose a high touch model where they would pay a monthly subscription fee until the case was over. And we would help them with filings, we'd be available for advice, and we connected them with attorneys and volunteers for the hearing. So my takeaway on that is with pricing, think about your customer acquisition costs earlier. It's not going to be perfect on round one. And to make sure that you are constantly iterating on that pricing model to optimize it for your business. So let's talk a little bit about go-to-market. And in this section, I'll note that the landscape of consumer marketing, including paid or earned search, has changed dramatically since we launched Help Self in 2018. So I'm going to share some lessons that we learned and also some tips and tech tools that exist now that probably would have made our jobs much easier, even though maybe some of these we didn't necessarily end up using. So one, people want to know that your legal tech tool is built by a lawyer or has credibility and backing in someone who has experience. So credibility is really key when you're competing for eyeballs. Some of you might be operating in an area that's not as popular. And as a result, maybe you don't have as much competition. For example, if you are horse law, yes, that's a real customer of ours who built a platform for buying and selling horses and the transactional aspects of that. Then in that arena, you may not have that much competition. You Google search and you're gonna by default appear at the top of those search results. But whether you have a lot of competition or not, in either case, if you're a lawyer who has built this tool, put that front and center. We tested 2 different landing pages when we were building Help Self Legal. One of those landing pages emphasized my background as a lawyer, my experience working with domestic violence survivors, and a second one focused more just on the tech, so more of a LegalZoom / TurboTax marketing model. We A/B tested that, which again is also something that I highly recommend. Test your landing pages. And we found that people were a little over 50% more likely to purchase when they encountered that kind of lawyer first landing page. And their purchasing decision was made in a little over 2 minutes quicker. So putting your credentials front and center is really going to help to make sure that people trust you. And with so many scams on the internet these days and so much content, people are wary of legal software without some sort of credentials or lawyer backing behind it. And we really capitalized on that. So video can be an incredibly powerful tool to gain credibility here too, putting like a video of yourself on that page. So next, how do you build a long-term plan to start getting people in the door without huge recurring costs? The answer is create truly unique and useful content, and they will come. So for us, our single most powerful set of content was a set of different organic, on the organic side, was a set of articles that we did on the domestic violence restraining order rules. And we did this on every county in California, down to filing and service requirements, particularities, information on the self-help court, self-help hours, and legal aid organizations who serve the area, and even some of the judges that usually presided over these cases. So we built a template of the information that we needed on each county. And then I actually sat there and built out all the pages myself. I called court clerks to get data that might not have been online. But while I think we probably took the harder route, we just as well could have handed a template over to an intern or a law student and had them call around and ask about some of these unwritten rules from each of the different court clerks. And this is a piece of content you actually can see one version of of what we built. And we made it sort of like pretty and made it more like a little diagram for people. We still get people messaging us about this today, even though we don't provide this service. So we started to take some of this down to get less people coming in onto the Documate side for this. But we still get people messaging us about this today because we built that content early on, and it's valuable content that people loved. And on content, a few more lessons that I would say here is, it's a long game, so don't be discouraged if you're not getting rankings on Google on day one. Keep building and make sure you have a sitemap on your website that allows Google to track the content and see it as valuable. To cite your sources. So the historical thinking, I think, around SEO a while back has just been that maybe has permeated the current thinking, is that you don't want to lose SEO juice by linking out to someone else. But linking out is actually also good. Google sees it as a sign that you have facts and you have sites that, and when you have sites that link to other sources, which, by the way, you can have it open up in another tab so people don't lose your tab, those sites actually rank higher. And then third little tip here that I would give is, if you spend the time to create content, make it multi-purpose. So if you did a podcast, turn it into a tweet, turn it into a white paper, turn it into a webinar, turn it into a video. You did all the research and you created the content. So message it on all different types of platforms so that people can find it, because people just consume their content in very different ways. Next up, I'm not going to spend too much time on this, but just maybe if you want, take a screenshot of this page. These tech tools will be pretty essential to your content strategy, and they could really help you build out that content in a more efficient, effective way. So take a look at some of these for figuring out search terms, what people are searching for, to create articles, or at least first drafts of articles, and to see how you're ranking and how hard it's going to be for you to rank on some of these different search terms. Next up, search engine marketing. It is hard. Paid search is hard, but if you get it right, it can be gold. There is so much competition in search engine marketing in a lot of areas. And so you could end up handing over a fortune for 0 conversions. For us, we were getting tons of leads per day, but in the early days, we just really couldn't get it to work from a customer acquisition cost perspective, as I sort of shared a little bit earlier on the metrics. And obviously the things that you want to think about are leads per day and what is your profit margin on those leads. And that wasn't working for us in the early days. Why? Because one, some of the leads were, to be frank, junk, and they weren't people who had intent to buy. And two, it was incredibly expensive, where we were competing against lawyers who were charging huge retainers and could afford to pay a lot more for those Google ads than someone who's charging $15 for someone to go through the process. Towards the end, though, I mean, we tested, we iterated, you can't be afraid of failure, because that testing can get you to a place where you do strike gold, where you do find that key search terms that really work for you in the market that works for you. So we ended up getting that to work by narrowing our scope. Instead of going for words like DV online, we started targeting DV Alameda County Service, because that was one that really worked well for us, because they had some funny rules there that we optimized on. Another thing that we did was we gave things away for free. So not all tools that you built, not all of these legal tech tools that you build are revenue generators. Some of them can actually be lead generators, and that can get you a ton of attention. So one of the things that we did is we actually built a tool, pretty basic one actually, for a fee waiver form. How to get a fee waiver, just type in some information, get the fee waiver form. It was kind of hairy in California. It was one of the judicial council forms. We allowed people to automate that and get to the end of that process. And that actually we provided that for free. We put it on a bunch of different websites. We put it on a bunch of different Facebook groups. And that actually got us a lot of traction. And people were coming in just to use that fee waiver form. And then some of those people ended up coming in and realizing that they needed our further services. Next up is press. So press is, I would say this is one of the things that we did best, and it actually paid off. So once you build your tool, reach out to media and be targeted. So we actually reached out to a bunch of different bloggers and media channels who focused either on legal tech or focused on women's rights or domestic violence in general. Again, domestic violence is not specifically a women's issue, but it was something that we targeted people who were talking about domestic violence. And that really paid off. We got an article posted on law sites, which actually sort of ended up being more lawyers who were reaching out to us. You can email people like Mashable. This article that I have on this page is Mashable wrote about us, and that got us a lot of traction because that had a more consumer facing group of audience. And then post on things like Hacker News and message people like TechCrunch, and think about where your audience is really reading about this. So that was truly a lightning talk, and we packed in as much as we could. As lawyers, I kind of want to end on this. As lawyers, we are super competitive. So I want to leave you with this, which hopefully will be a little inspirational. This is a quote from LegalZoom's S1 for their IPO. And what they're talking about is why they are going to keep their market share. They say, there are structural impediments making traditional attorneys unable to adapt to technology advancements, including the lack of available talent for significant investment in technology and innovation. So LegalZoom is sort of capitalizing and banking on the fact that lawyers are not going to invest in technology and not going to compete with them. So let's prove LegalZoom wrong. Lawyers have the expertise and the vision to build legal tech products, and now they also have the technical talent. So if you guys have any questions, please do reach out to me. Feel free to book a time to chat with us. And this is a topic that I'm super passionate about because I think this is the way that legal services are going to become more accessible and the way that lawyers are going to be able to scale their practices and become more competitive in this landscape. So if you ever want to chat, I'm here to chat. And I will pass it back over to Brittany.
Thank you so much, Dorna. I think we have time for one question. If it's about 3 minutes, we have about 3 minutes for questions. So if anyone has a question, please raise your hand and I will call on you. And or you can just put it in the chat. Or you're welcome to unmute yourself as well and just go ahead and ask.
Yeah, and if anyone is shy right now and you want to message me later, feel free to, you guys all probably have my email at dorna@documate.org. And I'm always happy to chat with you further about anything that you're curious about. I see Donald is raising his hand.
Okay, Donald.
Dorna, thanks, Brittany. Dorna, we've spoken before, and I think I connected to you through Clio because Documate's on that platform. And I think of Documate as basically just a document automation alternative to like Hot Docs. So I've spent a lot of time as a trust lawyer. I'm just curious how big your adoption is among attorneys for document automation in trust and estates, for example. Do you have, 1,000 users, 100,000 users?
Yeah, so trust and estates is actually one of our biggest areas of adoption. It's one of the areas that we target a lot when we're doing our marketing. We don't give our specific customer counts out mostly because we're growing so fast, so it's always going to be outdated. But we do have a pretty big adoption in the trust and estates group. And if you go onto our Slack page, we've actually found there are lots of people who want to share what they're working on with other attorneys. So let's say you're a California attorney and you haven't built anything and you don't have your own forms that you're necessarily going to work on. You might find another attorney who wants to share their forms, and that'll get you ground up and allow you to modify those forms. And a lot of people think about us from a document automation perspective, which is definitely a huge core of what we do. But I noticed one of the questions actually in the chat is, when will Documate have portals available? Our longer term strategy is document automation. Yes, always a huge core, and we're always making that more robust, but we want to help you build a full legal tech practice where you can interact with your customers. And so we have some basic portal features right now where people can log in and store their data, but we are over the course of the next few months, we're introducing more and more features on the portal side so that you can have full collaboration with your customers.
Okay, thank you so much. I think there was one more question in the chat. What I will do is I'm going to have us move on really quick to the next part, but if there's time during networking, we can get to that question. So I'm just going to share my screen really quick and do a quick wrap up of announcements, one of them of which we just heard, which is around the customer portal that Dorna mentioned and Molly mentioned in the chat as well. Just give it a second to load. So another announcement that we wanted to share with you is that there's been an update to the data manager. So you can now search, sort, filter, organize, and securely store your client data. There's a couple of things I can put in the chat in just a moment around where you can go to find more information. We mentioned the client portal coming soon, which will be really exciting. And then also, if you want to add anything to the wish list, which is I'm just going to move this really quick. So if you have any features that you want in the Documate platform, or you want to vote or add comments to existing feature requests, you can do that as well. And then
I wish very seriously, and things are always being ticked off of it. So please do add.
Yes, thank you for adding that. And then next time, we're going to be hosting these lightning talks on the last Thursday of each month. As you see, we do make them really tight and quick to kind of go with that lightning talk theme. So the next one will be on Thursday, July 28th at the same time and place. Automation specialist and South African lawyer Brendan Sabir will be discussing the topic, keep calm and build on, how a programming mindset keeps me focused under pressure. I think Brendan's here just now. So hi, Brendan. You can register for that. You can register for that lightning talk on Eventbrite by going to the Cor Meum Law Eventbrite page. I'll also post the link into the chat in just a moment. And that concludes the main portion of our lightning talk for today. We're going to be transitioning into an optional 5 minutes of speed networking, which I will explain in a moment. Feel free to go if you need to, but if you'd like to stay, I'll stop the recording and move into the speed networking portion now. So let me stop my share for a second so that I can post a few of those links in the chat for you before people go. Or let me just see. Actually, Molly, do you mind sending some of those into the chat so I can move on to the next portion? Just putting you on the spot. Thank you.
I'll put them in the chat, and then we'll have them in a follow-up email that will come in just a few minutes.
Okay, then let's move on to the speed networking.